You know, we tend to think of a classroom as just four walls, basically a container for teaching. But what if the room itself is one of the most critical tools for learning? So today, we're going to move beyond just decorating tips to really dig into how you can intentionally design a classroom environment where everyone, and that includes you, the teacher, can actually thrive.
Does this sound familiar at all? I think we've all been there. It's that sinking feeling you get walking into a space that just feels lifeless. And if we feel our spirits sink, you can bet the students are feeling it too. It's a huge sign that something needs to change. But the big question is, where in the world do you start? So that sinking feeling is not just about some ugly posters on the wall. The whole atmosphere of a classroom directly impacts everyone's well-being and, honestly, their readiness to even engage with the material. A dull room can just kill enthusiasm before a lesson even begins, while a vibrant one can spark that curiosity the second students walk through the door. To fix this, it really takes a pretty big mindset shift. It's about moving beyond just managing behavior, what the teacher says and does, and instead focusing on creating the conditions for learning to happen more naturally. It's less about control and way more about cultivation. Let's break this down because it's a really important distinction. Classroom management is active, right? It's about the teacher's actions from moment to moment. But creating a learning environment, well, that's foundational. The argument here is that a teacher's main job isn't just to lecture, but to create this fertile ground where students can actually learn for themselves. So you got to ask yourself, where do our ideas about what a classroom should look like even come from? Well, if we don't stop and think about it, we often just recreate the exact same environments we grew up in. We just default to what we know, even if we remember absolutely hating those same sterile rooms ourselves. And that brings us to the most important first step of this whole journey, and that is reflection. Before you even think about moving a single desk, the real transformation begins with asking some really deep questions about the kind of space you truly want to create. Really think about this for a second. Your role defines the whole power dynamic. Do you want to be seen as this distant authority figure? Or more like a mentor who's guiding a journey? A manager overseeing tasks? Or maybe a colleague who's exploring ideas right alongside your students? The answer to this changes everything. And then there's this big one. Who actually owns the room? Is it my classroom or is it our classroom? See, when students feel a sense of ownership, they're just way more invested. They're more likely to take care of the space and, frankly, each other. It's a huge shift from a teacher-centered to a learner-centered space. And finally, what's the vibe going to be? How do you want people to relate to each other? Is it that old traditional hierarchy of teacher and students? Or could it be something more collaborative, like colleagues on a project or even co-explorers on some grand adventure? Defining this relationship really sets the psychological tone for the entire year. Okay, so once we've done all that inner work, it's time to get creative. The source material suggests this really powerful exercise to help crystallize your vision. Find a single metaphor for your ideal classroom. And this one idea can become your North Star for basically every decision that comes next. A great metaphor can instantly define the atmosphere you're shooting for. It gives you a guiding principle for every single thing you do with the space. So, what is your classroom? Is it maybe a gymnasium? A place for practice, repetition, and really strengthening those intellectual muscles through some rigorous mental workouts? Or what about a garden? This suggests a space where you're nurturing ideas, being patient, and creating just the right conditions for things to grow organically. How about a laboratory? A place that values curiosity and safe experimentation, where making mistakes is just seen as a natural part of the discovery process. Or hey, maybe even a circus. A space that's just buzzing with different activities, all expertly guided by a ringmaster who keeps the energy high and keeps everyone focused. Now look, these are just a few ideas to get the wheels turning. The source material actually has dozens more, from a restaurant serving up interesting new ideas, all the way to a workshop for building skills. The specific metaphor isn't as important as the act of choosing one that really captures the spirit you want to build. All right, we have our intention, we have our metaphor, now it's time to act. Let's get down to the practical, concrete steps you can take to start transforming the physical space right now. And first things first, before we get to the fun stuff, we have to address the absolute basics. These are the foundational things like light and sound that are so easy to overlook but can completely make or break a learning environment. And just look at how simple some of these fixes can be. Can students see clearly? Just move that bookshelf that's blocking the window. Is the room super echoey? Hanging a cheap rug on a wall can absorb a surprising amount of sound. Are the desks always clanking shut? A tiny blob of blue tack makes a world of difference. Too hot or cold? Empower a responsible student to manage the remote. These aren't big budget changes. They're just smart, simple fixes.
Okay, so once you've got those foundational things sorted, now we can start adding layers of character and personality that really line up with your vision. This is where the room starts to come alive. So here are 3 fantastic, totally doable strategies. First, decorate with intention. The source suggests something as simple as a washing line strung across the room to easily hang and rotate new, interesting items. Second, and this one is so important, display your learners' work. It shows them they're valued and that this is their space too. And third, create zones. Maybe a quiet reading corner with some cushions, or a resource station for kids who finish early. It makes the room multifunctional and way more engaging.
And please remember, the goal here is not some dramatic, expensive classroom makeover you'd see on TV. Meaningful transformation, the kind that really lasts. It doesn't come from a big budget. It comes from small, thoughtful changes, all driven by a clear intention for the kind of environment you want to create.
So I'll leave you with this final, powerful question from the source to reflect on. Take a look at your own space, but try to see it through your students' eyes. What is one small, simple change you could make tomorrow that would make the absolute biggest improvement to how it feels to learn in that room?